Welcome to Your Next Chapter, where we feature conversations with leading audio creators and industry experts shaping the future of podcasting. I'm Jeremiah Tittle, CEO of Next Chapter Podcasts, and your host for insightful conversations that delve into the creative processes, challenges, and innovations driving the world of audio storytelling. Really excited about this episode's guest. It's Adam Tex Davis, an Emmy-nominated TV producer behind Brain Games, a screenwriter who's worked with stars like Leonardo, DiCaprio, and Reynolds, and co-founder of Atomic Entertainment, a company I've grown to really love. The company behind hit podcasts like Who Smarted, Mysteries About True Histories, and Slaycation, who truth be told, our executive producer, Nick Kastner, has also worked on. We've already had Tex's co-founder, Jerry Colbert, on the show, which I learned a ton from Jerry. So we're really excited to talk today to Tex about the creative force at Atomic. So Tex, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Appreciate the being on the show and the glowing intro.
Yeah, it could have been longer. Maybe Nick could have written more. Should we have made it a minute or two longer? And then you wouldn't have had anything to say on the actual interview.
Jerry already told you all the good stuff. No.
Okay.
Just kidding.
No, Jerry's great. And for the two of you to have co-founded Atomic, I mean, I could just ask you questions about Leo and Ryan Reynolds the whole time, but I'm going to, for the podcast industry audience, those listening, because it is kind of more of an insider podcast, but I like to learn on the show. I like to meet smart people such as yourself. First question, what makes podcasting unique? What's unique about creating a podcast compared to doing TV or film as you've done in your career?
Well, the audio only component is really the biggest thing. I mean, I'm not a huge podcast guy. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. And I think in a way that helped me because I'm not trying to be like other podcasts. I'm coming at it very fresh, and I'm using all the storytelling techniques that I learned from writing movies, from creating TV shows. So basically, it's just how do you do that, but you don't have the benefit of visuals. So I have to explain things, but you don't want to, in a way, it's like with movies, it's show, don't tell. But with podcasts, it's the reverse. It's tell, because there is no show. So you have to figure out, how do I tell the story in a way that doesn't feel like just telling and sitting someone down and telling them, what audio tricks can we use? What sound effects? What other ways can you tell the story that's just strictly audio? And that was the biggest learning thing, and realizing, using humor, using all the sound effects, music, everything that in the audio world was probably the biggest learning thing for me.
Yeah, the theater of the mind. It's I wouldn't say a blessing and a curse, but it's just different, right? It's you have the ability through, as you said, sound to do things that you could maybe, hint in some type of narrative fiction, for example.
Right. Well, look, in a movie, it would say, in the script, it would say exterior rainforest, scientist tromps through the, cuts down brush as they walk through. Here, we would start in the rainforest, and I would have the narrator basically just say, okay, see if you can guess where I am right now. And then we'd play some rainforest sounds. And it's like, did you say the rainforest? If so, you're right. And then you're immediately in a rainforest. You've imagined it, and you've heard all these great sounds. So you're really taking advantage of the audio.
All right, I have a tough question for you now, and I feel like these are hard to compare, but you have the ability to do so. So I'm going to ask you, do you have more optimism now for podcasting or TV?
Oh, that's not a hard one at all.
Okay.
Based on our experience, it's podcasting. I mean,
cool.
The people are, see, here's the thing. It's not about the people. The people watch TV, and the people will listen to podcasts. But for whatever reason, it's a lot easier to spin up a podcast, get it out there, and grow an audience than it is to get executives and people at the networks to buy a TV show and take a chance on a TV show. I mean, obviously, you can't put any kind of comparison on how much it costs to do a podcast versus a TV show. So I understand the gamble is bigger in TV, but we've gone out with the TV show idea with a big star from the science world, who's probably the biggest star in the science world, and could not sell it immediately. You want to guess who it was?
Yes. Does it rhyme with Tyson chicken?
It certainly does. It doesn't even rhyme with it.
It doesn't rhyme. That's the
it
name.
Literally is.
Neil deGrasse Tyson. Sorry.
Yeah. So we came up with a show based on Neil deGrasse Tyson's best-selling book, Starry Messenger. We pitched it to all these different networks. Now, it's not completely dead, but we heard enough no's where we're like, oh my goodness, like the TV industry has hit another low in a sense that the fact that we can't sell that show. Because it used to be like, hey, we have a science show idea. And our agents or somebody would say, look, unless you're walking in with Neil deGrasse Tyson, you're probably not going to sell it. So what do? We walk in with Neil deGrasse Tyson and still can't sell it. And meanwhile, we've got hit podcasts. He's got a hit podcast. Neither of us are doing TV shows right now. And, it's still alive in one or two places, but it's really, the canary in the coal mine sort of thing, the scientist in the coal mine. And we're like, okay, just keep spinning up podcasts,
Love it. Well, two things to double click on there. We often, whether it's a pitch meeting or conversations we're having with prospective clients, say that podcasting is the farm system for video, whether that be TV or film. That more just comes from my baseball and sports radio producing background. That term, and I believe in it. But the second thing I wanted to double click on is if a lot of film funds are now going towards serialized television, I'm surprised, but I guess you gave a great example of podcasting still kind of being ahead in terms of your optimism quotient there.
Well, first of all, scripted TV versus unscripted TV, like there's still a big demand for scripted television. So, Atomic, we tend to do a lot of unscripted stuff, or quote unquote unscripted, because for an unscripted show, I sure did a lot of writing on Brain Games and Brainchild and all these unscripted shows. But the point is, it's like, yes, scripted shows with narratives and characters and stuff like that is still huge, but that's not really what we're doing in the unscripted world. Yeah, podcasts are way ahead. Your farm team analogy is actually great because I do agree. The podcasting is another element of the farm team. It used to be newspapers or magazine articles or books, things like that would be turned into movies, turned into TV shows. Podcasting is now like a farm system to feed into TV shows. You see it a lot with true crime, for example. A big true crime podcast becomes a TV show. But again, it's so much easier to spin up a true crime podcast like what we did with Slaycation. In fact, we pitched Slaycation to Discovery ID back in 2014, 2015. And they had tried something similar, they said. They were very vague on the details, but for whatever reason, they didn't take it. So we spun it up as a podcast. Obviously, if it was a TV show, it would be very different than the way our podcast is. But it costs us very little to do, and it's growing a huge audience. And who knows? Maybe that becomes a show, because if it grows big enough.
No, I think it's a cool way to more cheaply, not to hammer the point or beat a dead horse, but it's a cheaper way to prove out IP, to prove audience, to say you're onto something. And I have to give you kudos, bias aside, with Nick's involvement with Slaycation, that it's kind of like marrying worlds in a very creative way, what you've done with the series. And I just think it's phenomenal. So want to show some love there, give you your flowers. I was curious, is there anything about the film or TV industry that you wish podcasting would adapt or adopt?
For most of my career, I wrote fiction. The screenplays I've written, fictional. I've even sold some TV pilots, some TV show ideas, all fiction. Then I got into the nonfiction space with Brain Games,
Mhm.
And, Jerry and I, we've known each other since college. We go way back. He was working at National Geographic, and they did these like 3-hour specials, Brain Games. And then he said that they want to turn it into a TV show, but how do we turn this into a show, like a half-hour show? So I came on board, and I always joke that Jerry is Brain and I'm Games, and that's how we work together,
I love it.
And, I found the storytelling techniques and stuff from fictional, fictional storytelling, and I applied that. And, again, I'm not a brain scientist guy, so if I can make it interesting and fun for me, then I figured it would be interesting and fun for the audience. As far as podcasting in the film world, I mean, can there be more podcasts that are like films and are fictional? I mean, I know there's fictional podcasts. For some reason, I don't gravitate towards that. I feel like the podcast medium is better served doing nonfiction. As far as techniques and stuff, I mean, it feels like it's adopting as much as it can with the sound effects and the music and the, trying to set a tone. I don't know. I don't know how much more you can bring over from the film world. I want it to go the opposite. I want podcasts to become, the movies, and take a cool a cool podcast idea and turn it into a movie, or a TV show.
Yeah, I love that. Curious about your podcast listening. So, what do you think makes a good podcast? Do you have any podcast examples? I know we were talking about nonfiction being dominant there. I guess I should ask you then, in the fiction space, I mean, whether it's a Blackout or are they having, worked with the stars that you have in Hollywood, are there any, like Rami Malek and Blackout, are there any podcasts that stand out to you that do fiction well?
This is going to be a crazy answer, but I don't know, because I don't really listen to them. I honestly don't have time. Like right now, I've got I'm over 4 different podcasts. Plus, we do some branded work. I'm about to launch a new podcast that stars me, and I don't know if you know Bruce Valanche. Do you know Bruce Valanche?
I know that name.
He was a writer for 25 plus years. He wrote the Academy Awards, like the telecasts.
Oh yeah, yes, he wrote the Academy Awards, right? Yes.
Yeah. Hollywood Squares, Center Square. So it's Bruce and I looking at the Oscars of the past to see what they got right, what they got wrong, the snubs, the flubs, the oversights. We debate about it. There's some crazy, every single Oscar award show has something crazy in it. Psycho and Spartacus weren't even nominated the year it came out. They both came out the same year. Neither were nominated for an Academy Award. It's like, what? Things like that. So that's coming up. So I'm on that show and I'm writing that show. So it's like, I almost don't have time to listen to podcasts. But what I would say is the snippets I have listened to sound great. I just, I'm a movie guy, so I love watching movies. And that's why I think I like visual storytelling and I like audio nonfiction. I want to learn stuff. I don't necessarily want to get sucked into a fictional world that's just audio. I feel like there's so many movies I need to see. Since the pandemic, I've been watching every movie from the 40s, the 50s. I went months without seeing a movie in color. So it's like I'm a big movie guy, but I try to apply storytelling techniques to the podcasts. Whether it's kids or adults.
Well, you're kind of answering, some of my the next question, or kind of where I was going to head with the conversation around, well, first of all, I have to say, big Valanche fan. I think he's phenomenal and a unique. I think David Wilde is another person. I'm sure they've crossed paths or whatever, but he's more on the music side, perhaps. But I think in terms of creating a show that resonates with an audience, I'm curious how you go about, if someone comes to you with an idea, what are some of the first things that you ask them, or they should ask themselves if they have a concept for a podcast before you take it kind of to that next stage?
Great question. I mean, I will say this. I am sort of an idea factory, so the ideas usually generate from me. But
Mm-hmm.
to ask myself, it's like, has this been done? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then if it has, how do you make it different? Those are questions. If somebody came to me with a good idea, it's like, okay, yeah, has this been done? If it has, how do you make it different? And also, how do you make it so that you can do many, many episodes of it? And what is the hook? What is the hook that really separates it? Like, a friend of mine and we had an idea for a true crime show, and it's a narrow lane and it's got a cool title. But we haven't figured out the hook yet. It's like, it can't just be the two of us telling the cases. I mean, in a way, Slaycation works in part because my wife is a huge true crime fan. Jerry is a true crime producer. I am a comedy writer. The two of them research the case and they tell it to me, and I know nothing about it. So I ask questions and make jokes and interrupt her to hold on and keep them on track. And that's the hook of the show. It's not just three people telling a story or her reading a Wikipedia. It's like we've came up with a hook that's beyond just the fact that it's murders and mysterious deaths that happen on vacation, but it's also the way in which we tell the stories and the banter between us. And because I've known Jerry for so long, obviously I've been married for, and with my wife for, 30 years. So we know each other really well. She's known Jerry forever. So three people who are very comfortable with each other and can really have a fun conversation, helps, So the hook of the show, it's like, it's not just the information. It's not just, I'm going to tell stories about this. Okay, but how and why how is it going to be different?
Yeah. It creates that sort of fly on the wall scenario that I think a lot of people appreciate in podcasts, and taking something good, I'd say, from radio, but you could say it's true crime, but if you go into like subgenres of kind of the chat plus true crime, it's a hybrid. Plus, it kind of reminds me of Dollop a little bit too,
Right.
where you just they just riff on these historical stories. And in your case, there's this true crime, and then there's like, how would Tex react? And then, and then you have, I should also add the fact that, I didn't know, with respect to your wife being, a big fan of true crime. I guess it leads me into audience feedback, or people who are fans of this type of genre. Like, how important is it to have that feedback into the creative process as I'm reflecting on Hollywood and what films actually make it into a theater or to your Netflix?
First of all, the true crime genre is very female driven. So
Totally.
And my wife would just watch every show. Like, that's the thing with the women with Discovery ID. You say, what's your favorite show on Discovery ID? And they go, all of it. Like, it's almost, it doesn't matter. The shows could just be edited together as one long strip, that just runs on a loop, because they would watch one show, the next. They might have preferences, but they like them all. As long as they were well researched, as long as they had enough drama or enough, let them second guess or try to play detective, so it was very important, obviously, that we have her be part of it, because she, one of the early reviews said, "Oh, it sounds like the two guys just wanted to do a show and they brought the wife in." And I'm like, no, it was the reverse. It started with her. We got to get her a show. Look, I would go to bed so much to true crime. I was like, we might as well start getting paid for this, because we're constantly being inundated with true crime here. So it's like, I had this idea for, I had the title Slaycation, and, we went to her and we were like, what do you think? And she's like, oh, I'd love to do that. And the first step was, okay, see if you can find 100 cases. Let's see if we can just literally find 100 cases that fit this bill. If we can't, then it might not be a show, and we weren't interested in doing like one case and like, a whole series, like 20 episodes on one case.
Yeah.
That's too much. And a lot of our cases actually have been covered in other ways, but because we do it differently, that's what sets us apart. In fact, the mark of success is people will write into us and they'll say, Here's a case idea. I've heard this on other shows, but I want to hear your take on it.
Oh, I love that.
That's what you're going for as a podcast. Like, to the point where I don't care the material's not original. I want your spin on it. So that's another thing to add to the pile of things I said earlier.
What a compliment. What a compliment. Yeah, that's really cool. I bet that was really rewarding to hear that. And then all the more eager to fulfill that request, right? So taking a turn towards tech, we've had a couple conversations about AI on this show. I'm not super involved, but some of my colleagues are, and thank goodness they are, to help spin up all sorts of answers. But what role do you think AI has or should have in the creative process?
Okay, so it's funny. The things I use AI for, non-creative writing. You know, when you're doing a branded thing that just has to hit brand talking points, sometimes AI can spin out something that's a good start. It's funny as a writer, like, and this is a phrase that everybody, like, you're not a writer as much as a rewriter. So you're constantly rewriting, whether it's yourself or other people's stuff or whatever. So AI can be useful as a initial thing that then you then rewrite. I will occasionally use AI as a starting thing and then rewrite the heck out of it because it's not good or it's not, but mostly in non-creative writing. When it comes to creative writing, I don't go anywhere near AI. The only other thing I use AI for is, when we're doing our scripted podcasts that are, the educational stuff, I might have a voice. It's one line and it's got to sound like an Italian guy. And I don't want to have to go and hire an actor for one line. And I can't, my Italian accent is terrible. So I say it, I record myself, and then I use the AI program to find Italian voice accent person, and I put that into the show, and it's literally one line. Other than that, as far as writing goes, I would never use it for creative stuff. But you need an idea for a title. You could type in all the things about a show and it'll spit out a whole bunch of titles. And then from that, you might find one, or you might, mix and match. So it can definitely be useful to get a lot of, whiteboard, brainstorm type ideas out there. So that's another version of what you can use it for. Jerry will, as a joke, he'll put a lot of stuff into AI just to see what it spits out. And we usually laugh at it and we're like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like, I would never.
I saw a meme actually earlier today, and it was, I wanted AI to do the dishes and the laundry, and I think it was like the Jetsons was the image or whatever. And then it had, so that I could paint and write. But instead, it's painting and writing while I'm still doing my laundry and cooking dinner.
No, we try to use it for things like, to create a poster or to create an image of like, hey, we want to sell this. And it's always so, like, there'll be enough good elements, but then like some wacky stuff. And you're like, just can never quite. I mean, it's going to get there, though. That's the scary part. Yeah, it is going to get there. So.
Yeah, I agree. So at Atomic, how do you approach which new shows to launch? Like, why True Crime for Kids? Then why Oscars pod from those two? Just wondering, what is your process? Like, how do you assess which new shows to greenlight?
Right. Well, first of all, it's not True Crime for Kids. Slaycation is for adults. But oh, okay, just making sure.
from kids. Then
what? Oh, I see. Yeah. Right. I thought you said for kids.
Sorry, I probably said it wrong.
Big difference.
Sorry, Nick.
Big difference. Well, here's the thing. The pandemic kind of led us into podcasting because we couldn't shoot anything. Right. And we had some cachet in the brain space, having done brain games, and we knew kids liked brain games. We had done Brain Child for Netflix, which was a kids, educational show. So we had some cachet in that space. We also had a nice big email list because we had created a free curriculum for Brainchild, and all you had to do to get it was give us your email. So we had like a 10 to 12,000 person email. So we're like, let's start up a kids educational podcast. And this is funny. Yeah, I started to listen to some of the bigger ones, and I turned them off pretty quickly. And I was like, I don't want to do anything like that. Jerry and I, we came up with let's keep it very simple. Jerry will play this narrator character, and he'll basically tell, we'll pick different topics, but all the topics will be very sliced, very thin. So we could do lots and lots and lots of episodes. Like we'd never do space, but we'll do sun, moon, stars, Milky Way, black hole, comet, meteor. So we have lots and lots of episodes. Anything that has a whiff of science or history is fair game. And we approached it. We recorded a couple episodes, and we emailed our list, and we said, check out this new podcast. And a lot of people did check it out. And so we had a nice little base to start from. And so we were doing educational. Then it's like, oh, goodness, it's hard to sell ads on kids' educational podcasts because the advertisers, it has to be appropriate. Are the kids listening? Are the families listening? Are the adults pitching to adults or just kids listening? So that was part of the reason, or part of the thinking in Who Smarted was like, let's make sure that it's not something annoying that the parents don't want to listen to with their kids.
Right.
Make sure there's jokes in there that maybe go over the kids' heads that the parents will get. And have them be part of it too. Then it was like, okay, it's still hard to sell ads. Okay, what podcast genre can you sell an ad for anything? True crime. How about true crime? You could have literally anything advertised on your true crime show. So let's think about true crime. And, again, we do think about these ideas. Like I said, we pitched a bunch of true crime to Discovery ID, and Slaycation was our favorite title and narrow lane from that. So we're like, could that be a podcast? Yeah, let's reformulate that as a podcast. I'm a huge movie guy, so the Oscars podcast, was a natural. Basically, we're just doing things that we love, things that speak to you. That's how we decide, Our other podcast, The Mysteries About True Histories, it's like, you know what? No one's ever done a podcast to try to make math fun. So we're gonna take that on. We're gonna do a story that's fun, but also has math in it. And even the title, Mysteries About True Histories, you take the first letter, it spells math. So it's like hidden math in every episode. And so that's how our thinking is. What do we love, and how can we be different than everybody else?
Love what you're doing at Atomic. And we asked this question of all our guests as we wrap up the show. The name of the show is Your Next Chapter. So got to ask you, Tex, what's next for your career? What's your next chapter?
I feel like I've had a career of next chapters. I mean, I started screenwriting, then I got into television, and then it was like from scripted TV to unscripted TV, then from unscripted TV to podcasting. Now I'm still writing movies, so I want my next chapter to be circle back around to the first chapter. We're still pitching television. The thing I'd love to leave on is if you're going to be a writer or a creative in general, but especially a writer, the most important thing is versatility. The more versatile you are in your thinking, in your writing, in what you're willing to do, in what you can teach yourself to do or master or just attempt at, the more versatile you are, the more you'll work as a writer, and that's the thing. It's like, even as a podcaster, I'm doing all this writing on these scripted shows, but I'm also writing promos. I'm writing songs. I'm writing poems. All these things get used in the shows. It's all this different kind of writing that, all day long, all I do is write. And it's a round robin of all these different shows. And whether it's a nonfiction opening or a fictionalized story in my kids' podcast that teaches kids about, salmon, like whatever, it's lots of writing and just being open and learning how to write all kinds of different things, whether it's TV shows, podcasts, movies, the more you can learn and teach yourself to write, the better chance at having a long and meaningful career.
I love this. I think I'm going to start asking every guest to impart some wisdom to the audience at the very end, because it's so kind of like centered on, I'm just so curious about how people navigate one gig to the next. And I always find that moment as like really telling about what's important to you in that moment of time, perhaps. But I really like that you added some advice for the audience. Thank you so much, Tex, for joining me here.
My pleasure.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
My pleasure. Great meeting you, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Your Next Chapter. I'm your host, JT. Our executive producer is the aforementioned Nick Kastner, and this was edited by Justin Cortese. We drop episodes bi-weekly. Please follow the show, and thank you for listening.